Tracy Munns here from Verde Plus. I am a financial advisor and here to talk to you about debt servicing ratios. So this is in relation to mortgage holders, so those that are looking at who currently have mortgages or looking at taking on mortgages, home loans, property investment loans. Now, there's been a lot of talk in the marketplace with regards to the Reserve Bank and increasing their market toolkits to be able to put extra restrictions in the market. And one of them is the debt servicing ratio, or the income to debt ratios. So I thought it might be timely just to explain what that actually means, and going back in history on where New Zealand has come from and what those numbers look like for you, and the impact that it may or may not have. So to be clear, we don't know if income to debt ratios are going to be brought into the market, but it's a possibility, so this is more an educational piece on letting you know what they mean. Now, I started as a mortgage advisor back in 1998, and back then we did have debt servicing ratios, and the main debt servicing ratio in 1998 was a 35% debt servicing ratio, and that essentially meant that your borrowing ability was 3.5 times your gross annual income, give or take a few numbers. So let's look at a comparison. On a $100,000 income, we have a ratio of 35%. In 1998, I can tell you that the rate was around about 8.75% as a 3-year fixed rate. I can tell you that because it was like that for months, it didn't change. So based on those figures, that person would have been able to borrow approximately $370,000 for a mortgage. So that's back in 1998, based on this rate, this servicing ratio and income, that's what they would be able to borrow. If we roll forward and say, when did the debt servicing ratio get removed from the market? It was really at the turn of 1999, 2000, 2001 that we had a real shift. So if I sort of look at a scenario of around about 2004, and I'm just sort of picking that era, we then changed from a debt servicing ratio to something called an uncommitted monthly income, or UMI. And so this was looking at the figures in a different way, and it was saying, what's your net income less your expenses, and do you have a surplus? So if we take a person on 100,000 income and look at the rate in that period, we were looking at higher rates of around 10%, give or take. And under those terms, this person would have been able to borrow about $550,000. So we had a significant jump in the amount that you could borrow from a switch from a debt servicing ratio to an uncommitted monthly income. And as I say, it was over a short period of time. And if you have a look at this, the borrowings were higher, but actually so were the interest rates. So the loan repayments were actually significantly higher at that point, but because the bank saw that you had a financial surplus, then that was actually deemed to be approved and you could move on. So if we now fast forward the clock to today, and we say that we're now in 2016, and have a look at what's happened, our interest rate has dropped from 10%. Now, this is a servicing rate, so it's not the actual rate. So if we look at a servicing rate today and just take an average of 7.55%, a person with that servicing rate drop would be able to borrow $700,000. So let's put it into context. Over this period of time, borrowing has pretty much doubled. If you did this calculation back on the old debt servicing ratio numbers, you are looking at a 60% debt servicing ratio. And as you can see, it's up to 7 times your income, and let's just be conservative and say 6 times income. So the question is, if the Reserve Bank did bring in debt servicing ratios, where would it sit between these figures? And there's been discussion of 4.5 times or 5 times, 3.5 times, but it's just to give you an idea of where this is at. Now, the other thing that I just wanted to highlight for you, and I've written down some figures here, is a loan repayment on this loan would have been around about $2,900 per month, and a repayment on this loan, and I'm looking at this on an average of 4.5% interest rate, so rates will potentially go up, that's a $3,500 payment. So you've gone up $600 a month in payment from this rate to this rate in that period of time. Question I have for you, what if that went to 6%? So what if there was just a 1.5% increase on your rate? What would this look like? And the payment would change to about $4,200. So if you have a look at the variances on what's happening, this is where the uncertainty is coming from on New Zealand has just become debt laden because the lending environment over time has allowed you to get there. So the debt servicing restriction, yes, it's looking at the marketplace in general, but I think because of the trend of what's been going on with the level of debt rises within New Zealand, the Reserve Bank is looking at how can they cool that down and make sure that maybe these potential rises don't keep going on. So that's a little bit of history on the debt servicing ratio. I just want to take this a little bit further and just put it maybe into context of today. So I'll just roll this off. So right now, and I'm just going to sort of say Auckland, but this is actually becoming New Zealand wide. What we've got is we've got supply and we've got demand for housing. So our supply is here. Actually, I'll just change this. Our supply is here and our demand is here. So this is where we're having some issues, is that we've got more people wanting the supply of property and we don't have enough supply for the demand that's there. So in order to change that equilibrium, there's many things that you can do. You can basically reduce demand by stopping people coming into New Zealand and doing all of that. You can reduce demand by making it harder to borrow money. We've seen that with deposit restrictions come in, and we may see it with the debt servicing restrictions. So what they're trying to do is they're trying to bring demand down so that there's a more equilibrium between the supply and the demand. What is going on in the background is as measures are taken to bring demand down, we're also potentially having supply issues. So supply issues about building consents and the slowness of that going on. It's about developers within apartments that have been going live and then they're being shut down because they basically can't get the funding. So we've got to be very careful that as demand is being shifted, that we keep supply at the same level. So the reason that the Reserve Bank is looking at these additional tools is because they're trying to curb demand to get supply and demand back into an equilibrium. So I just wanted to just put that into a little bit of context of what's happening right now. If you would like to test what your current debt servicing ratio is, on our website and our contact details are on the video. We have a calculator called a debt servicing calculator that you can go to, and we'll put the link up, and you can go and have a play and just see what your current debt position is in terms of your debt servicing ratio, and even have a bit of a play about what potentially might happen in the future. And of course, if you have any questions, feel free to contact myself and the team at Verdi Plus. Thank you.